welcome everybody back to the 32nd annual Native American Festival here, virtual festival here at Moundville in Moundville, Alabama. This is our, I think, third day, and it's been interesting to, for the first time, to actually not actually be out in the field, but be on screen with everybody. But we've had some great participants in our virtual festival this year. And today is another one of those great days. And if you were with us a little earlier, Commander John Herrington was here with us, and he's back again with us, along with Dr. William Keel. And we're going to have a nice discussion where you guys can get involved with. And again, I just want to remind everybody that you can send questions in to this program. I would introduce Dr. William Keel. Dr. William Keel has received a bachelor's degree in physics and astronomy from Vanderbilt University and the University of California in Santa Cruz. He also joined the University of Alabama in 1987 and now professor of astronomy and physics in the department, which does research and interest including evolution of the galaxy, includes studies of the galaxy and groups of high redshift. Again, he's an author of books called Road to the Galaxy Formation in Sky at Einstein's Feet. I want to thank you, Dr. Keel, for being with us today. And again, Commander John Herrington he's a Chickasaw the PhD, first member of a federally recognized tribe to travel to space. After graduating college with an engineering degree, he decided to apply to the Navy, which led to a 22-year career in the Navy as a test pilot and an astronaut. Today, we're going to have where Dr. William Keel and John Herrington are going to be taking questions, but also discussing things that you're going to want to be interested in about the sky and about space. So at this moment, here in Moundville, Alabama, and at the Native American Festival, Dr. William Keel and Commander John Herrington.
Thanks, Greyhawk. Hey, Dr. Keel, how are you?
Fine. How are you? Saw your presentation a little while ago.
Doing well. Thank you so much. Roll Tide, right?
Sure. Means students have taught me that means a lot of things, but okay. The organizers have cast out a net collecting questions, largely from young people at schools all over the map. So I'll present some of these.
Okay.
And we'll get your response. The first one is from Finn in the United Kingdom. He wants to know, what was your favorite food to eat in space?
What was my favorite food to eat in space? Chicken fajitas. We have most of the food was dehydrated because it weighs, water weighs something. And so they take the water out of the food to dehydrate it. And then we rehydrate it in space because one of the byproducts of making electricity is water. So we would put water back into these things. We also had meals ready to eat, which come in bags and you heat them in an oven. We had chicken fajitas, and so I put those into these homemade tortillas that we also flew because we take tortillas rather than loaves of bread because when you take the tortilla apart, it doesn't flake into little teeny crumbs and you don't breathe it into your nose. And so my favorite was chicken fajitas, but also shrimp cocktail because the shrimp cocktail was dehydrated. It had horseradish, had cocktail sauce in it with horseradish, and it clears your sinuses because when you get to space, the fluid shift causes you to get congested, and you want spicy food that clears your sinuses. So those are the two things I really liked.
All right, so future astronauts might develop a taste for chicken fajitas and shrimp cocktails.
We want spicy stuff. We actually squirt. We don't shake pepper. You have liquid pepper because if you shook pepper onto it, all the pepper granules would float and you'd breathe them in. So actually have liquid pepper in a little bottle and you would squirt it onto your food and surface tension causes it to stick. It's liquid. And same thing with salt. You squirt it on, Tabasco sauce, sriracha, those type of things. you like spicy stuff. You really dull your taste buds in space. It's weird.
Okay, here's from somebody who read through your biography fairly carefully, looking at the Nemo 6 mission on the Aquarius Undersea Lab. What was it like to be underwater for 10 days? And I have to ask, what kind of contrast was that from?
Well, it's fabulous. NEMO stands for NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations, not the fish, not the clownfish, like the movie. And it's a habitat that was run by the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. And it's down in Key Largo. It's about 60 feet. The habitat itself is a small submarine, essentially, on stanchions, down about 60 feet. And you go down for about 10 days. And so I commanded 2 astronauts and an engineer, and we had 2 techs that actually ran the habitat. And so essentially it was the idea of space flight on the cheap. The idea is, can you go into an environment that's a dangerous environment, do spacewalks, scuba diving, in an environment where you develop a camaraderie with the people. You get to experience and do experiments the same way you do in space. It's just a different environment. It's wet. And interesting about it is when you're underwater like that, you get nitrogen saturated. We breathe nitrox, so higher nitrogen content. Or no, there's more oxygen. It's like 60-40, I think. And so you get a lot of nitrogen buildup in your blood. And so going to the surface is bad. If you run out of air, you don't go up. You go find some place to put more air into your tanks, because all that nitrogen will come out of solution and cause you to have the bends. And so we would be down for about 10 days and did spacewalks, and it was a fabulous time. It was great. Did experiments with hardware and exercise as well.
Okay, a question from Lauren in Hoover, Alabama. How did you document things on the space station? For example, what kinds of cameras were used?
Okay, great question. We had a variety of cameras. We had wireless video cameras on our helmets when we did spacewalks. And if you can, in a photo here, we actually had a Nikon. In a picture here, we had a Nikon Kodak electronic still camera. We actually had that inside the space station. So that was the only those electronic camera that went onto a card. We also had a Hasselblad cameras. We had a 400 millimeter lens. Here's a picture of Nick Boudard and Don Pettit. Imagine a 400 millimeter lens that doesn't weigh anything. It's easy to hold, and you Velcro it. You see the blue, it Velcros to the next to the window. And we also had Hasselblad cameras. So we had a 70 millimeter Hasselblads for taking Earth observation photos. And those are all Velcroed right around the overhead window, the overhead hatch, which one of them actually will open up if you needed to back on the Earth. And you're taking photos through those windows. And we had certain places we had to take photos of. As scientists at NASA would ask us to look at certain places on the Earth, we'd take photos. And so I remember I was riding we have a cycle ergometer on the space shuttle to get exercise. And so I remember hopping on the cycle ergometer in Sydney, Australia, pedaling across the Pacific Ocean in about 20 minutes, floating out of the cycle ergometer, floating to the window, grabbing a camera and taking photos of the Sangre de Cristos in southern Colorado, where I'd been as a kid. And that was a neat experience to take photos from space like that.
Okay. Susan in Coleman, Alabama is wondering, how do you regulate your sleep patterns?
How do you regulate? NASA gives you a schedule. We have a daily schedule, and our clock, when we lift off, we start a clock, and it's called Mission Elapsed Time, MET. And so our schedule is based on that MET time from our liftoff. You have a 16-hour day and 8 hours of sleep. So 24-hour, normal 24-hour cycle on your schedule. So you get 8 hours to sleep. And I never slept 8 hours. I mean, I think the first night I slept maybe 2-3 hours, maybe, because I'd never slept not touching anything before. Imagine for the first time in your life, you're not touching anything. And it's really hard to sleep. And when you close your eyes, you see these little teeny flashes of light. These high energy particles hit you and they kick off a little flash of light in the back of your eye. So imagine you're trying to sleep, not touching anything, and seeing fireworks when you close your eyes. It was a challenge. But within the second or third day, I was so tired. I worked so hard that it was easy to fall asleep. And I would squeeze myself between these big bags we had on the shuttle. So I had that feeling of being pressed into something. And I had a headset on. I was listening to music. 2001: A Space Odyssey. I actually took the soundtrack to that, and a variety of other CDs I listened to. And if I fall asleep really well.
Okay, so Justin from Hoover asks the question that you're probably expecting every presentation. How do you go to the bathroom in space?
Very carefully. Yeah, we're humans. We have bodily functions, and so on the space shuttle, we had what's called a waste containment system, WCS. It was actually a small cabinet on the mid deck of the space shuttle. It had a containment container for solid waste, and then you would vacuum away all the liquid waste. So the urine would get vacuumed away in a small hose into a tank. You actually could vent that overboard. The solid waste was on a little cushy little seat you sat on, and when you had to go number two, as they say, you had a big handle. You moved forward and you did your business, and you helped it along because it's got a vacuum that helps pull the waste away from you. Doesn't work really well sometimes. It's kind of a challenge to be able to do that, but you have to, and that's was one of the most challenging things. I think the one on space station. They just flew a new one up to the space station here, where they actually, they recycle the urine. We didn't do it on the space shuttle, but on space station, they actually recycle your urine, filter it out, and use it as drinking water. The other one up there, I think they actually packaged the solid waste, and then it was going on the Progress vehicle, and would burn up into the atmosphere when it came back. So I'm not sure exactly how the new one works.
Okay, I want to pop up one of my own questions here. A lot of people who've been in space talk in various ways about what some people call the overview effect. Mm-hmm. Whereas you look down at the Earth from such a high altitude, you maybe develop a more global perspective. You don't see the internal division. You start to see yourself as, I guess, an Earthling more than anything else. And I have to wonder, does this maybe resonate even more strongly with somebody from a native background where stewardship of the Earth has been such a value?
I would say yes. The answer to that would be yes. I felt certainly, imagine going to the Grand Canyon, and you can look at this from the edge of the canyon. You see this beautiful canyon laid out before you, so you have a different perspective on what it's like. But now take a river trip down in the canyon and ride a dory down through the water. You get a whole different perspective on what it's like. I think as a native person, and be able to look back at places that I grew up and places that I was familiar with, that you have a certain connection to to being on the land. I was fortunate. I flew in space. I got to see Earth from a perspective of a very macro view, I call it. And then I lived underwater for 10 days, and I got to see a micro view of it. So I got to see different perspectives. And then I rode a bicycle across the country. So each one of those has a certain flavor to it that makes you appreciate being able to live on this beautiful planet. From space, though, you get a much better perspective of how, I think, fragile the Earth is. In some of these photos, you can actually see the thinness of our atmosphere. Say it's 100 kilometers, 62 miles thick. Right here is a great view of what we call a terminator between light and dark, where we're going into a night pass. And to actually see how thick your atmosphere is and be able to look at it from that perspective really makes you appreciate how fragile the Earth is. And to be able to come back, and it's fundamentally changed my perspective on my place in the world and my responsibility to do what I can to protect it. And that is the huge impact, I think, of flying in space for me personally. And so from a native perspective, we know, this is the only planet we have that we can reside on right now. And the idea that we can go someplace else and make another planet Earth-like, say, go to Mars and terraform Mars. I look back and say, well, we're off to a really good start here, but we're not doing the best job we can do to protect our planet for future generations. That has fundamentally changed my perspective on our responsibility here on the Earth because this is what we have. If we're not here, we're not going out there. And we need to be stewards of the planet and listen to the scientists that say this is what you need to do, to make this planet a better place, for future generations. Long answer to a short question, but I think it's a very powerful one.
Yeah. In fact, that kind of resonates. We've got a question in from Dr. Bomar from UA Museums.
Hey, Dr. Bomar.
Do you know of any other Native Americans currently in the space program, I guess specifically in the astronaut program, and what you think about the prospect of a Native American on a Mars mission now that such things are sort of seriously being planned?
Yeah, as far as I know, there's no other astronauts that as a member of federally recognized tribe in the space program. I'm not familiar with that. I know folks that I've met in my journey that are studying engineering, that would like to be astronauts, that want to work for NASA. I know folks that do work for NASA. They're Native, but not in the astronaut corps. I think some point in time, sure. The idea is that we have the opportunity to fly people from all different cultures, all different backgrounds. We get to work with people that have grown up in a different political system than us. I was fortunate to spend time in Russia working with Russians, the people that I used to, that my job as a naval aviator was, they were my enemy in the Cold War. And here I find myself in Mother Russia on a Russian airplane, flying across Mother Russia with a Russian cosmonaut next to me, telling me where he was born and pointing out the town where he got married. I mean, this was fundamentally changed from my upbringing as a military officer, and I loved every minute of it. I loved being able to understand and experience other people's culture. So hopefully when we go to Mars, it's going to be a multi-ethnic, this incredible mix of people. Gene Roddenberry in the 1960s, I think, had it right. If you look at the flight deck of the Starship Enterprise, and you see people of different genders, different ethnicities, different languages, and people from different planets in that case, that made up a group of people that had a common goal. And I think we need to take away this idea of nationalism from that we are the only ones that can do it, to we can do it together, because we all inhabit this earth together. This is not the domain of one particular group of people. This is our political persuasion. We need to do it all to work together, because this is what we have. And we need to appreciate that and work to that goal.
Thank you. Stephanie from Tuscaloosa and Carlos from Mobile had about the same question. What was your job on the space station? What were you looking for or assigned to do?
Well, every astronaut that flies has a primary mission, and my primary role was as a flight engineer, mission specialist 2. Though I'm a naval aviator and I have my gold wings, I'm a naval aviator, I fly the jet. I was fortunate to be the flight engineer, so I had a chance to be on the flight deck on ascent and entry, and help the commander and the pilot, monitor the systems and work procedures. And then once I got there, I got to spacewalk. I got to go outside the space station and help assemble a large truss on. If you'll find a photo here. This is on top of the P1 truss. My job was to help install. It's actually, we mounted it remotely with powered bolts, and then we had to make connections for ammonia and electrical lines. So I spent about 20 hours outside the spacecraft doing a spacewalk. I had a power tool. I had a ratchet. I had different tools, and I was a high altitude iron worker. I mean, I got to honor ancestors that were high altitude iron workers. So that was fun. I enjoyed it. And also I transferred cargo, from the space shuttle to the space station and back and forth. Rode the robotic arm that you see sticking up right there. That's me. On the left side of the photo, taking a picture of Mike, who's taking a picture of me. And I got to ride the robotic arm. That's on top of the P1 truss, the solar panels behind me. It's a fabulous view. Mike was a great photographer. Mike took much better photos of me than I think I took of him, because he had more experience at it than I did.
Laura in Birmingham's wondering, how do you exercise in space when their missions are getting longer and longer?
Sure. On the space shuttle, we had a cycle ergometer, and that was just an aerobic, just to pedal the cycle ergometer, against a resistive device, and you would use that just to get some cardiovascular work. On the space station, I think daily schedule requires them to have 2 hours of exercise a day, both aerobic and resistive exercise. So you can't, you can lift 100 pounds all day long, but it weighs nothing. And so what they do is they have these systems that allow you to pull against a resistive device, a set of springs to get that resistive to maintain muscle mass, which is a great point because in space, your heart doesn't have to work as hard because it's not having to pull the blood from down to your legs to your head. So your heart gets actually weaker. So you use muscle mass in your heart. So you do the exercise aerobically to keep your heart rate up. And then you do resistive exercise because you don't want to atrophy your muscles over a long period of time. So if we're going to go to Mars and it's going to take 6 months to get to Mars, you want to be able to step out and be able to function and do that, for a 3-year period, because that's what it's going to take to go and do your thing and come back. So that's a challenge, is be able to do the exercise you need to do for long duration space flight. And we learn from doing that.
Martina in Decatur, Alabama is wondering, what happens if something on the space station breaks?
Yeah, fix it. That's a great question. And one of the things we do as astronauts is you simulate your mission. You go up and you simulate and do the tasks that you're required to do for your particular mission. But not just that, you simulate the failures that can occur while you're there. And you do that ad nauseum. I mean, that's one of the things that you do over and over and over again, is to prepare yourself for the failure scenarios that can occur. And so you have this bunch of engineers working in the back room that input these different systems failures that you have to work the procedures for. So be it, I'll say a water leak on the space station, ammonia leak, bad stuff. You actually have a leak, an air leak in the vehicle. How do you isolate different modules? And simple stuff as some computer failures. Fire is a terrible, obviously you don't want a fire like we had on Mir. They had a fire in Mir. They had a collision on the Mir space station. They had a major air leak on the space station from the collision. And so you work through those procedures before you ever fly. And they actually test you. And the Russians really have a very, very detailed way, and the Americans as well, of going through and performing all these functions you have to do and get tested on it before you fly.
Here we have a question about communication. How did you stay in touch with your loved ones back on Earth? Was there some sort of internet connection at the time, or how did that?
Yeah, through a wireless. We had it was, I think, S-band or KU band. We actually had a computer set up where I actually could do a video conference with my kids and my wife at the time, and I had little candies I would float in front of me, and my kids had written me letters and little notes that were my food locker. So I had, one time out of the 2 weeks I was in space to be able to sit and have communicate with my families. Space station, they have a variety of ways to do that. I know one's called a voice over internet protocol, VoIP, protocol phone. You can pick up the phone. You can actually call folks on the ground. I remember being in Phoenix once and my phone rang, and I looked down. It was a 208 number, which is Houston, or 281, I think. And 281. And I was like, who's calling me from Houston? And it turns out it was, I think, Clay Anderson on the space station was calling me to say hi. Mike Lopez Alegria, my spacewalking partner, when he was a commander of space station, he called me. So it's kind of neat to get a call from space station.
Okay, we have a couple of people who essentially want to know, what was your favorite thing about being on the space station, and what did you do for fun? I presume the schedule left you a few loose minutes.
Yeah, very few. The most favorite thing I did was spacewalking. Obviously, to me, that was the high point in my professional career, was to go outside and to do work I was trained to do in a real hostile environment and to do it well. And as we all know, things don't go as planned. There were problems that occurred when I was doing my spacewalks that I had to overcome a couple of issues. And I was very fortunate that I was able to solve some problems on my own without the help of anybody on the ground. And that was good. Here I'm holding a 1,000-pound cart with my hands. I had to move that cart from one side of space station to the other riding the robotic arm. A little white dot behind my back is the moon. So I'm only about 220 miles closer to it right there. So those were the things. You worked really hard, and the idea was that you worked really, really hard, and then you got to play when you were done. And my commander said the idea behind this mission is you will do your job to the very best of your ability, and when it's all said and done, and you're successful, then we can enjoy the time we have. If we had come back on the day we were supposed to come back, I would have not have really had time to appreciate doing something other than work. Because you're so incredibly busy. By the time we already came home, we had there were like thunderstorms from Florida all the way back to Louisiana, and so I had a 3-day vacation in space because we could not come home because of weather. And so for those 3 days, I got to look out the window, take pictures of places I'd been as a kid. I answered internet questions, got to play with our food, got to play with our tools, got to do things that we had done a good job, but now we had the opportunity to enjoy the fact we're in this very unique environment. And I'm just so thrilled I was able to be able to do that.
Okay. While in space, what did you miss most about the Earth?
Since I was only for 2 weeks, I can't say there was anything I really, really missed because once again, I was so busy. I appreciated the fact I could look out the window and kind of guess where I was without looking at a map. There's a map that you set up on the flight deck, and you can actually has a world view of where you are in your orbit. And a lot of times I'd sit and look out the window and try and guess where I was. And like one night I fell asleep on the flight deck. I just took a nap, and I fell asleep over here, and I woke up over here because the air kind of circulates and moves you around. And I woke up looking out the window, and it was night, a night pass. And I looked down and thought, there's London. I can see the coast of England, the coast of France, the Pas de Calais, the English Channel, Paris, all in one view out the window. And as you moved over it, that was a fabulous, fabulous experience.
Okay, we have a couple of items that have just come in online.
So Kristen asks, hi, everybody. It's me, Lindsay, the festival director and our resident space camp graduate. So Kristen asks, did your Native American background offer any unique perspectives that you noticed different from your fellow astronauts while in space?
I think, outwardly probably not. I think what I was able to do, taking up items that were honor my heritage, I took a flute and a feather. And I played the flute on the space station, and my friend Don Pettit pulled out a didgeridoo. He took a didgeridoo, but instead of the didgeridoo, he played a vacuum cleaner hose. And I played Amazing Grace as a tribute to folks in the Trail of Tears. I played that on my flute, and Don played a vacuum cleaner hose, and so I was able to take up some items that honored my heritage and to share those with the folks on the flight. And we actually recorded that. It's kind of an interesting little video where I was able to play the flute and Don playing a vacuum cleaner hose. But I think, anything we do, our background, our heritage kind of inherent to how we view things and how we appreciate, what we have. And I see, from my perspective, looking back at the Earth and appreciating what we have was fundamentally changed by being in space.
Awesome. I had a question. So what was your training like leading up into going into space? So how did you prepare for your spacewalks?
Well, to prepare for the spacewalks, we actually have a pool in Houston, the Johnson Space Center, just off the Johnson Space Center, called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. And it's a 200-foot long, 100-foot wide, 40-foot deep chunk of 86-degree water that you actually have modules of the space station, life-size modules of the space station in there. And you train to do your spacewalks in the suit in this water, and you get neutrally buoyant. And they put foam rubber on you and they make you float. And so you can actually translate along the hardware and do the tasks that you would do in space underwater. So that's the interesting thing there is the water, you work against the water and the water pushes against you. And so it's hard to move and it's easy to stop. And I actually did some survival training there as well. Here I'm getting into a raft in case we had to bail out of the space shuttle. And so you learn to spacewalk in the tank, but when you get to space, there is no water, and you don't have safety divers. You don't have anybody with a camera looking right at you, and so it's easy to move and it's hard to stop. And so when you spacewalk, you realize that the pool kind of works against you. It tells you you know where to go, but now you got to move a lot slower, because if you move fast, you can actually get out of control. And so the water prepares you for the pathways, but you actually have to. We say slower is faster, translating across the space station, because you practice it in the pool. You practice your tools in the pool as well.
Okay, Terry from Birmingham brings up the interesting question of aliens. What's your view on, do we share this universe with other minds?
I personally believe we do. And the reason I do believe that, and that's not because I didn't see him out the window. I didn't see him floating by in a flying saucer or anything. I look at it from a mathematical perspective. Statistically, given the number of, visible, and Dr. Keel, you're far better acquainted with this than I am. You look at the number of let's take the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. Phenomenal shot, 13 billion light years from the Earth. We have about 10,000 galaxies. If you imagine looking at taking a dime and looking at the eye of the president in the dime, in that little spot in the sky, we've seen up to 10,000 different galaxies. And every galaxy has hundreds of billions of stars. So 1 to 2 trillion galaxies in the visible universe times 100 to 200 billion stars, 10 to the 23rd maybe. I was told for every grain of sand on the surface of the Earth, there's a star in the visible universe. And so go out and grab a handful of sand and try and wrap your head around the fact that in that pile in your hand, there's a planet around think about it, there's a planet around a star with the same constituents in its atmosphere or something similar, that life can flourish. Why is it life so precious here and it can't, something else that exists out in the universe we know, the same constituents that are here, why can't life flourish? But the universe is a vast thing. And the closest star is what, 4.2, 4.5 light years away. And it would take 70,000 years to get there using current propulsion. I think life exists in the universe because the probability is so great. I don't think it's come here in flying saucers and hid from us and snuck around and done things like that. But there's things we can't explain. That doesn't mean it's alien life. But I think life exists because the probability is so great. This is the mathematician in me.
Awesome. So, Dr. Keel and Greyhawk, do you guys have any questions for Commander Herrington anymore?
Just one to wrap up from me. If somebody puts you in charge, where should humanity go in space next? What should we do and why?
Look, the question is, I would ask, okay, as an astronaut, I'd go to the moon, I'd go to Mars. That I would love to do that. Okay. Now, as a taxpayer, I would say, okay, what's the rationale for going? Why are we going back to the moon? Why are we going to Mars? We would go to moon to practice those things we need to do to go to Mars. Okay. We've had robots on Mars, for many years now that have long beyond their engineered existence. They're still working. And we can take photos of Mars. We realize that the water existed on Mars. We know that, we don't know what life exists on Mars, but the day we find out life existed on Mars at some point in time, that fundamentally changes our perspective. So for me, that would be the initiative to go to a place like Mars to learn more that robots can't do. But at what cost? And how do you do that? Do you do it as Americans? Do you do it as a global civilization? I think at some point in time, hopefully in my lifetime, we will go to Mars because we want to solve that question about life existing someplace else, because it's going to fundamentally affect what we do here. I mentioned this earlier. I don't think we need to go to Mars and terraform Mars and make it an Earth-like planet, because people don't value what's going on here on the Earth. People don't realize we're having a fundamental impact on the quality of life on Earth by ignoring the science that we as humans fundamentally affect life on Earth. And if we're not here, we're not going out there. I think Charlie Bolden was a NASA administrator, and Ted Cruz had said once to him, our job as an astronaut, the job of NASA was to go out into the universe, go out into the solar system and explore out there. And Charlie, General Bolden said, well, Senator, with all due respect, if the launch pad's underwater, we're not going anywhere. If we're not here, we're not going out there. We think we need to solve the problems we have here as a collective society to make life on this planet sustained for the foreseeable future. At that point in time, going out and exploring and seeing what we can learn about other planets and how life, if it did exist there, why did it change? Because that fundamentally affects life here on Earth. That's where I'm at.
Well, I want to thank both of y'all for being with us today, and I'm going to share something every morning when I'm out here at Moundville, and I stand up on the mounds up there and look up at the sky. I realize that, my God, the universe is really big, and being on that mound makes me feel that, yeah, there is a lot more to everything than what we can basically see with our bare eyes. And I know our ancestors did the same thing when they sat up on those mounds and looked out the sky. And you're fortunate that you were able to get out there and extend out farther than any of our ancestors have done. And I'm actually, it's been a pleasure to meet you. Unfortunately, I have to meet you virtually. Again, like I said earlier, maybe one day you and I can sit on the mound and look up at the sky and tell stories with each other. Sure. I want to thank you both, Dr. William Keel and Commander Herrington, for being with us today. I learned a lot. You guys are awesome. And all you people out there that are watching, I hope you learned something. And again, this is our virtual Moundville Festival. And make sure that you get online and check out our gift shop, because we do have some really neat stuff out there, our cups. And I have to share this with you. And I think you guys are going to get one of these, but it's our festival shirt. Oh, yeah. So, get online and get to our gift shop. And again, this is our 32nd annual Native American Festival. And again, thank you very much for being with us. And you guys have a great day. And we have more things coming up throughout the week. And again, thank you very much. And in our language, we say Yokoki. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Dr. Keel.